In this video for PokerNews.com, we have the master video blogger, Brad Owen, with Pocket Aces. This is actually from a meetup game that they played at Aria with fans of Brad Owen and Johnny Vibes. Let's take a look at this interesting spot with the ace and the ace.
Under the gun +1 limps in for 10. This is the older player who caught me bluffing earlier. I said my plan was to get involved with him and bet big for value because he clearly doesn't like folding against me or getting pushed around at the poker table from younger generations. He happens to be running well at the moment. He just doubled up after getting it in, drawing dead to a gutter. Somehow he drilled it and now has a much bigger stack for us to absorb into ours. Everything's aligning for us to win a massive pot. We've got a monster hand against the right opponent with the straddle on. I raised to 45 in order to isolate him.
So right off the bat, given this read, now I don't know how strong this read is that Brad has, but assuming I have that read that he just said, and it's really, really, really strong, I would have raised it up bigger. I would have made it like 55 or 60 even, because if this player is literally never folding to me, this player is at my meetup game, right? This kind of presumes that this player is just not looking to fold because they think that young people bluff a lot, they think that Brad bluffs a lot, etc., etc. So I would make it even just a little bit bigger. I don't hate 45. I think 45 is fine and default. But maybe you want to go just a little bit bigger just to make the pot a little bit bigger because we are playing $1,100 deep, playing 2, 5, 10. So maybe exploitatively you can go just a touch bigger because that would not necessarily extract a lot more value now, but it would let the pot be a little bit bigger on the flop and the turn and the river, and then you can get more money in by the river, which is what you're clearly going for when you have aces.
Under the gun +1 calls. We're heads up. The flop comes King Jack 4. What a dream. In the hand I bluffed him in previously, he limp called a raise preflop with King 6 suited, so it's at least possible that he has top pair here, and I can get max value from him. The opponent checks. I bet 55 for value.
So here Brad goes 55 into the $105 pot, something like that. Kind of like on the flop, I would have exploitatively gone just a little bit bigger. Or pre-flop would have gone a little bit bigger. On the flop, I also would go just a little bit bigger. On King Jack 4, it is very, very easy for the opponent to have a king or a jack or a straight draw. And if your opponent actually is the type of player who's going to blast it in with a gut shot or, check call down with middle pair, you just want to bet bigger, just like $70 or $80. Because he's just not going to fold for a 50% pot bet or a 75% pot bet. So against that type of player, you just want to bet bigger and get more money in while you are very likely ahead. I realize we could be beat every once in a while, but in this scenario, our aces are essentially the nuts, and we want to make the pot big. And if your opponent is a bit of a calling station, you want to use bigger sizes across the board on all betting rounds with your value hands.
I want the player to stick around. He calls.
So Brad says he wants the player to stick around. The question is, how much wider will they stick around for 55 versus 80? And I presume if you give this player who likes to splash around with gut shots Queen 9 on King Jack 4, they're going to call $75 or $80. Maybe that's a bad read. This is where you have to make some logical deductions about your opponent, or you have to figure out how good your reads actually are because it's hard to know, right? I don't presume your opponent's going to call 55 with a hand like Ace-6 of diamonds or 7-6 of diamonds for a backdoor straight draw with maybe an overcard. So if I think they're going to fold those hands to any bet, then I'm only really concerned about the decent draws and the made hands. And I think most players who limp and then call from early position are going to have some sort of a pair, which I don't think is going to fold to any bet on this board, although they probably should, or some sort of reasonable draw. And if they have anything worse than that, I think they're going to fold to any bet. So I would have gone a little bit bigger.
The turn is the Queen of Hearts. Normally, I wouldn't like seeing this card because it connects with cards that a normal human might call a flop bet with. This guy's special though, and I've already seen him play King 6, proving that he doesn't necessarily play cards with similar denominations. The opponent checks. Typically, I might check back. I don't want to miss value against this player, and if somehow I don't have the best hand, I should at least have straight outs. I bet 130.
I like the bet. As on the flop, I'd probably just go a little bit bigger, setting up a river shove. Notice that if Brad just used slightly bigger bet sizes, the pot would now be something like $500, right? Then he could easily bet just a little bit bigger on the turn and then shove it on the river, get all the money in, no problem. As played, the pot's going to end up being kind of small, and he's probably not going to be able to shove the river, but you really, really, really want to be able to get all your money in when you have the effective nuts. Now, I realize aces are no longer the effective nuts in this scenario. But if your opponent is an extreme calling station, as I'm getting the vibe that he is from the way Brad's speaking, if you give this opponent a king or a queen, he's just going to call down. If he's just going to call down, make the pot big. If you do think they're going to start folding out to bigger bets, though, then I like the more medium bet sizes.
Player gathers chips and calls quickly. He might have taken some time to think about raising me if he had 2 pair or better. We've got him hooked, and I plan to take advantage of his light calls on the river, particularly since he's already seen me try to bluff him. The dealer puts out the 3 of spades. Against anyone else, I'd consider this a blank. Against this guy, he could realistically have king 3 or jack 3 or something ridiculous that magically hits this. Under the gun +1 checks. I can't be scared that he has an overpair beat. I bet 400 to punish him if he thinks I'm bluffing.
Ooh, chunky bet.
We're looking for a call one last time. We don't get it. The opponent has other ideas.
It's always fun when you're just rooting for the call and then they have other plans, am I right?
All in.
The opponent snap rips it all in. All right, Brad. What do you do when you bet the river for $400 for a little bit more than pot and your opponent snap goes all in? Given this read, what would you do in this scenario? $500 into a gigantic pot that would end up being $2,300 if you called. Ugh, pot odds, all right? In this scenario, do you call or do you fold? Pause the video and write what you would do in the comment section below. Oh man, this is where you really have to ask, how absurd is this player? Is this the guy who's going to have a hand like King 7 and think, oh, if you got me, you got me, I'm putting all my money in? Or is the opponent going to be reasonable? In my experience, the players who are going to YOLO their money all in with the King 7 because if you got me, you got me, those players are all broke. They just don't exist at games like 5-10 no limit or 2-5-10 no limit. So, man, oh man. I've been through enough hands in these videos on YouTube that I know when people check rip it all in on you on the river, they probably just have it. Now, what is it? I don't know. It could be 4-3, jack 3 for all I know. I mean, it could be a lot. And as your opponent's range gets wider and wider, just with a bunch of nonsense, if you know the river range just contains proportionally more 2 pairs, and you know they're not just going to insanely bluff it all in on the river with some nonsense, then this is just a fold. It's an annoying spot, right? But it's probably just a fold, even getting good odds. You really need the opponent to be overvaluing a king. And the tough part about this here is that what draws missed that did not make a clear marginal made hand, right? Notice that the draws that missed are going to be hands like Queen 10, Queen 9, right? But those made a queen, and the queen's not going to rip it all in, most likely. So given all of the draws that missed improved to a middle pair, and typically, not always, but typically, your calling stationy opponents do not over bluff all in, man, I think you have to make a fold, even getting good odds. Ugh, I hate folding. I hate folding so much. Let's see if Brad can find a fold.
Yeah, Jesus.
Summon Jesus for help.
Oh, man. That's not what I wanted to hear. I just feel like you have King 3 here.
King 3 might seem like an absurd hand to put someone on, but I can't put it past him. I have 2 aces, making ace 10 a lot less likely. With players like these, it's difficult to know what's going on in their heads. I've seen the opponent make some strange plays already. It's only 500 more. I don't feel great about the situation. If I was getting jammed on by anyone else at the table, I'd let it go. I just can't do it here. I know there's a good chance I'm beat. I need to see how.
You win, man. I call. Call. Wow. Nice hand, nice hand.
The opponent flopped 2 pair after limp calling a raise from early position with King Jack offsuit. He wins the absolute maximum from me. Him jamming for 500 more is actually insane after I bet large on the river.
Don't be salty, Brad. Don't be salty. He's saying that the shove is kind of silly on the river because when Brad bets flop, bets turn big, and then blast river, Brad's range can be super polarized, meaning he has something like 2 pair or better, and King Jack actually does not do great against 2 pair. But you have to realize the opponent, if they're going to think a hand like top pair no kicker is the nuts, they're definitely going to think 2 pairs the nuts. In general, though, if I have observed one thing, is that people just don't check, raise, bluff nonsense like King 7 for top pair no kicker anymore. They just don't do it. They're all gone. They figured out that's bad. And if your opponent errs towards calling, when they do rip it all in, they usually just have the nuts, especially in spots like this where there are no logical bluffs, meaning like no 9 high type hands, it would make sense to check call the flop and the turn. So Brad makes the call, he loses. I get the reason he finds the call here because the opponent does absurd stuff, but given the way the board ran out, it's kind of hard to find the absurd combinations that would go for the bluff, especially given Brad really good odds. That said, who knows? When your opponents do absurd stuff, maybe you should just find the call and not worry about it. That's me for today. Huge thanks to Brad for letting us use this footage. Make sure you check him out on YouTube. He is the biggest poker video blogger by a mile. Huge congrats to him on that, by the way. He puts out amazing content on a regular basis, and I'm glad that he gets the recognition that he deserves. Good luck in your games. Have fun. Make the most of your opportunities. And when you get check raised on the river, if you do not have a really good hand, throw the cards in the muck.